In a world of clinking champagne flutes and whispered power plays, a struggling waitress was about to become the most important person in the room. She wasn't armed with wealth or status, but with a secret language she learned from a place of love and loss. When she greeted a billionaire's silent, overlooked mother, her simple gesture of kindness would unleash a chain reaction of deceit, betrayal, and ultimately a shocking revelation that would shatter a powerful family's world. What did she do that left a table of elites utterly speechless and a cold-hearted billionaire questioning everything he thought he knew? Stay with me to find out. The air in Aurelia, one of New York City's most exclusive restaurants, was thick with the scent of truffle oil, expensive perfume, and unspoken ambition. For Amelia Hayes, it was the smell of survival. At 24, she was a blur of motion in a crisp black uniform, navigating a treacherous landscape of demanding patrons and razor-thin profit margins on her tips. Every night was a performance, a delicate dance of politeness and efficiency, all to chip away at the mountain of student debt she'd inherited, along with her degree in linguistics. Amelia was different from the other servers. While they chatted about auditions or weekend plans during lulls, she would often be in a corner, her fingers moving in silent, fluid motions, practicing a language most people never saw, American Sign Language ASL. It was the language of her childhood, the language of her heart, a tribute to the deaf parents who had raised her with more love than money. They were gone now, taken by a car accident 2 years prior, but ASL remained. It was her inheritance, a secret world of communication she carried within her. Tonight, the restaurant was buzzing with a particular energy. The staff whispered the name in hushed, reverent tones, Jackson Sterling. He was a titan of industry, a man whose picture was plastered on business magazines with headlines like "The Midas of Manhattan." He was notoriously private, ruthlessly brilliant, and rarely seen in public. Booking his table was a coup for Aurelia's owner. Mr. Harrison, the restaurant's perpetually stressed manager, gathered the senior staff. "Listen up," he hissed, his eyes darting around. "The Sterling party is on their way. Table 12. Amelia, you're on lead. Don't mess this up. I want flawless service. He's here with his mother and his fiancée, Isabella Vance." A groan went through the staff at the mention of Isabella. A model and socialite, she was known for her stunning beauty and her equally stunning cruelty to service staff. She treated waitstaff like furniture that could talk, and her complaints were legendary. Amelia just nodded her face a calm mask. Inside her stomach churned. This was the kind of table that could make or break her month. A good tip could mean paying her rent and her loan installment without having to live on instant noodles for a week. A bad one, prompted by the mercurial, Isabella could be disastrous. She meticulously checked table 12, a secluded booth overlooking the city lights. The silverware was polished to a mirror shine, the crystal glasses were flawless, and the single white orchid in the centerpiece was perfect. Everything was ready. A few minutes later they arrived. Jackson Sterling was exactly as the magazines portrayed him, tall, impeccably dressed in a dark, tailored suit that probably cost more than Amelia's car, and radiating an aura of cold, untouchable power. His eyes, a startling shade of Arctic blue, swept over the restaurant, as if he were calculating its net worth. Beside him was Isabella Vance, a vision in red silk, who immediately wrinkled her nose. "Is this it, Jackson? It's a bit quaint." Jackson ignored her, his attention focused on the elderly woman he was guiding gently by the arm. She was elegant, with silver hair coiffed perfectly, and eyes that held a quiet, deep intelligence. This was Eleanor Sterling. She moved with a fragile grace, her gaze taking everything in, but remaining utterly silent. She didn't speak, didn't react to Isabella's comment, her face a serene, unreadable portrait. Amelia approached the table, her professional smile firmly in place. "Good evening, Mr. Sterling, Miss Vance. Welcome to Aurelia." She turned her warm smile to the older woman. "And welcome to you, madam." Elena offered a small, polite nod, her eyes scanning Amelia's face. Isabella waved a dismissive hand, her diamond bracelets catching the light. "We'll have a bottle of the Chateau Margaux 95, and bring some still water. No ice, San Pellegrino only." She didn't make eye contact. "Of course," Amelia said, her voice even. As she turned to leave, she noticed Elena gently tapping her son's arm. Her hands began to move in small, hesitant gestures. She was trying to sign, but her movements were tentative, as if she were used to not being understood. She was asking him something about the menu, her brows furrowed in a question. Jackson didn't sign back. He leaned in close and spoke loudly and slowly, as if she were a child. "Mother, it's French. I'll order for you." Elena's hands dropped to her lap, and a shadow of resignation passed over her features. She shrank back into the plush booth, her vibrant curiosity dimming into polite silence. She became, once again, an elegant but invisible accessory to her powerful son and his glamorous fiancée. Amelia's heart clenched. She recognized that look. It was the look of someone living in a soundless world, surrounded by people who refused to learn her language. It was the look her own mother sometimes had when dealing with impatient store clerks or dismissive bank tellers. In that instant, this wasn't just another high-pressure table. This was personal. Amelia made a decision. It was risky, it was unprofessional, and it could get her fired. But she couldn't stand by and watch that spark of life in Eleanor's eyes be extinguished. She took a deep breath, walked back to the table, and prepared to break every rule Mr. Harrison had just laid down. Amelia returned with the wine, her heart hammering against her ribs. She performed the formal ritual of presenting the bottle to Jackson, her hand steady despite the tremor of adrenaline running through her. He gave a curt nod of approval, his eyes never leaving his phone. Isabella was busy taking a selfie, angling her face to catch the light just right. Only Eleanor was watching. Her eyes, full of a quiet, weary intelligence, followed Amelia's every move. After pouring the wine, Amelia didn't retreat. She took a half-step closer to the table, focusing directly on Eleanor. Her hands, which had served 1,000 meals and polished 1,000 glasses, rose in front of her. She began to sign. Her movements were not hesitant like Eleanor's had been. They were fluid, confident, and imbued with a warmth that her spoken words, by necessity of her job, had to conceal. "Good evening." She signed her expression open and friendly. "My name is Amelia. It is a pleasure to have you here tonight." The effect was instantaneous and seismic. Isabella Vance, mid-pout for her camera, froze. Her perfectly sculpted mouth fell open, an expression of pure, unadulterated shock on her face. She lowered her phone, staring at Amelia as if she had just sprouted a second head. Jackson Sterling's head snapped up from his phone. His icy blue eyes, which had barely registered Amelia's existence, now locked onto her with piercing intensity. His face was a mask of disbelief, confusion, and something else, suspicion. It was as if a cog in his perfectly ordered universe had just malfunctioned. The waitress was not supposed to do this. But it was Eleanor's reaction that stopped Amelia's breath. The quiet, resigned mask fell away from the elderly woman's face. Her eyes widened, and for the first time that evening they shone with brilliant light. A gasp, soft and airy, escaped her lips. Her back straightened. She leaned forward, her entire being focused on Amelia. Slowly, as if dusting off a long unused skill, her own hands rose. Her signing was more ornate, more classical than Amelia's, like comparing a modern dialect to Shakespearean English, but the meaning was clear. You sign?" Elena asked, her fingers trembling slightly with emotion. Amelia smiled, a genuine, radiant smile that had nothing to do with customer service. "Yes. My parents were deaf. I grew up with ASL. It is my first language." A tear welled and traced a path down Elena's powdered cheek. She brought a hand to her chest, overwhelmed. In the gilded cage of her son's world, where she was often treated as a fragile relic to be managed, a stranger had just opened the door and spoken to her in her native tongue. She wasn't just Jackson Sterling's deaf mother anymore. She was Elena. Their hands began to fly. The menu. Elena signed her previous frustration, gone replaced with excitement. "My son says it is French. I adore French cuisine. What do you recommend? I love scallops. The coquilles Saint-Jacques are divine." Amelia signed back, her fingers dancing. "The chef sears them perfectly, with a lemon butter sauce that is light but full of flavor. And the risotto it comes with is creamy and rich." She described the dishes with a passion she rarely got to show her hands, painting pictures of flavors and textures. For the next few minutes, the rest of the world ceased to exist. There was only the silent, vibrant conversation between the young waitress and the billionaire's mother. They were in their own bubble, a world of flashing hands and expressive faces, oblivious to the stunned silence that had fallen over the table, and indeed, the nearby section of the restaurant. Jackson Sterling watched his jaw tight. He understood a few rudimentary signs enough to know this was a real conversation. He had spent a fortune on the best hearing aids, the best doctors, the best care for his mother, all in an effort to bridge the gap of her silence. He saw it as a problem to be solved with money. Yet here, a waitress earning minimum wage had effortlessly crossed a bridge he had been building for decades, simply by knowing his mother's language. He felt a confusing mix of awe, resentment, and a profound, unsettling sense of inadequacy. Isabella finally found her voice. "Jackson, what is going on?" she whispered harshly, her tone laced with disgust. "Make her stop. It's unseemly. People are staring." But Jackson didn't hear her. He was watching his mother. He hadn't seen her this animated, this happy in years. She was laughing, a silent, shoulder-shaking laugh, as Amelia described a particularly disastrous attempt at making a souffle. She was no longer the frail, silent woman in the corner. She was alive. Finally, Amelia, remembering her duties, gave a respectful nod to Eleanor. "I will let you decide. I will be back in a moment." She turned back to the table, her professional demeanor slipping back into place, though her cheeks were flushed with emotion. "May I take your order?" she asked, her voice calm as if nothing extraordinary had just happened. The silence that followed was heavy with unspoken thoughts. Jackson Sterling looked at Amelia, truly looked at her for the first time, and in his eyes, a flicker of cold calculation was replaced by a dangerous spark of curiosity. The game had just changed, and he had no idea what the new rules were. The rest of the meal unfolded in an atmosphere of surreal tension. The silent conversation between Amelia and Eleanor had sent ripples across the smooth surface of the Sterling's evening, and the waves were only just beginning to be felt. Every time Amelia approached the table, a strange ritual occurred. She would first attend to Jackson and Isabella's needs, with quiet, spoken professionalism. Then she would turn to Elena, and the world would shift. Her entire demeanor would soften, and her hands would come alive, checking in, sharing a small observation, or answering a question. Elena, for her part, was transformed. She ate with a newfound gusto, her eyes sparkling. She would catch Amelia's eye from across the room and offer a small conspiratorial smile. They shared a secret in this loud, bustling room, a bond forged in the shared language of silence. Jackson remained a silent observer, his sharp mind processing the scene before him. He watched Amelia, not as a server, but as a phenomenon. She was poised, intelligent, and possessed a quiet grace that seemed utterly out of place with her station. He had built his empire by reading people, by finding leverage and weakness. But when he looked at Amelia, he found neither. He saw only a genuine warmth that he couldn't quantify or commodify. It was unnerving. Isabella, however, was growing increasingly agitated. She saw the bond forming between Amelia and Eleanor, not as a beautiful moment of connection, but as a threat. Eleanor was supposed to be her future mother-in-law, a passive figurehead in the Sterling dynasty she intended to join. This waitress had, in a matter of minutes, established a rapport with Eleanor that Isabella hadn't managed in 2 years of stilted, one-sided conversations. She began to lash out in small, cruel ways. "This wine is breathing too much," she'd snap as Amelia walked by. "You should have brought the next bottle sooner." "My water glass is empty. Are you even paying attention?" she'd complain, despite the glass being 3/4 full. Amelia absorbed the barbs with practiced patience, her face a neutral mask. "My apologies, Miss Vance. I'll be right back with that for you." But Eleanor saw it all. During one of Isabella's tirades about the temperature of her soup, Eleanor laid a hand on Jackson's arm. When he turned, she signed to him, her movements sharp and precise. "She's cruel. Why is she with you?" Jackson's face tightened. He signed back, his own movements clumsy and slow. "Mother, please. Not here." Eleanor's gaze shifted from her son to Isabella, then to Amelia, and her expression was one of profound disappointment. As the evening drew to a close, another waitress, a perpetually envious woman named Chloe, watched from the sidelines. She saw the focused attention Amelia was receiving from the most powerful man in the room. She saw the wad of cash Jackson was preparing to leave, and she saw the scowl on Isabella Vance's face. A small, malicious idea began to form in her mind. When the check was paid, Jackson did something unexpected. He had left a $500 tip on the credit card slip, a generous but standard amount for a bill of that size. But as he stood to leave, he discreetly folded 5 crisp $100 bills and placed them directly into Amelia's hand, his fingers brushing hers for a fraction of a second. "Thank you," he said, his voice low and serious. His Arctic blue eyes met hers, and for the first time they weren't cold. They were searching. "For your exceptional service." Amelia's breath hitched. A $1,000 tip. It was more than her rent. "Thank you, Mr. Sterling. It was my pleasure." As they left, Elena paused. She bypassed her son and Isabella and walked directly to Amelia. She took Amelia's much younger, work-worn hands in her own soft, manicured ones. She looked directly into her eyes, her own welling with emotion. "Thank you." She signed, her touch gentle. "You gave me a voice tonight. Do not let anyone ever silence yours." Amelia felt a lump form in her throat. "It was an honor, sure." She signed back, her heart swelling with an emotion far more valuable than the money in her pocket. As the Sterling party disappeared through the grand doors, Amelia finally allowed herself a moment to breathe. She felt a profound sense of rightness, a feeling that she had honored her parents' memory. She was unaware of the 2 sets of eyes that had watched the final exchange with venomous intent. Isabella, who saw a rival, and Chloe, who saw an opportunity. The ripples were about to become a tidal wave. The next day, Amelia arrived for her shift, feeling lighter than she had in months. The $1,000 tip was a significant relief, but it was Elena's parting words that truly buoyed her spirits. "You gave me a voice tonight." It was a validation of her past, her identity, and the quiet language she held so dear. She felt seen, and it was a feeling more intoxicating than any financial gain. The shift started normally, the usual pre-service briefing from Mr. Harrison, the familiar rhythm of setting tables and polishing glasses. But there was a strange undercurrent in the air. Her co-worker Chloe was uncharacteristically solicitous, asking prying questions disguised as friendly chat. "Wow, Amelia, you really hit the jackpot last night," Chloe said, her smile not quite reaching her eyes. "I heard Sterling left you a fortune." "What was it, grand more?" "It was a very generous tip," Amelia replied, evasively not wanting to discuss it. Isabella Vance looked furious. Chloe pressed on, wiping a wine glass with vigor. "I bet she hates it when anyone else gets Jackson's attention, especially the help." Amelia just shrugged, trying to end the conversation. "I was just doing my job." An hour into service, as the restaurant began to fill, Mr. Harrison approached her, his face grim. "Hayes, my office. Now." A cold knot of dread formed in Amelia's stomach. The manager's tone was devoid of its usual brusque efficiency. It was cold accusatory. As she walked past the other staff, she felt their eyes on her. Chloe gave her a look of feigned sympathy that made her skin crawl. Inside the small, cluttered office, Mr. Harrison wasn't alone. 2 stern-faced police officers were standing beside his desk. Amelia's heart began to pound against her ribs. "What's going on?" she asked, her voice barely a whisper. Mr. Harrison avoided her gaze, shuffling papers on his desk. "We received a call this morning from Ms. Isabella Vance," he said, his voice flat. "She claims that after her dinner here last night, she discovered one of her diamond earrings was missing. A custom-designed piece from Cartier, valued at over $50,000. Amelia stared at him, utterly bewildered. An earring? What does that have to do with me?" "Ms. Vance specifically remembers taking it off at the table because it was pinching her ear." Mr. Harrison continued, his voice hardening. "She believes she may have left it on the table wrapped in a napkin. You were the one who cleared that table, Hayes." The accusation hung in the air, thick and suffocating. "No," Amelia said, shaking her head. "No, I cleared everything. There was nothing. I would have seen it. I would have turned it in immediately." "Is that so?" One of the officers spoke, for the first time, his voice a low rumble. "Because we have a witness, another member of your staff, who said they saw you acting suspiciously around your locker at the end of your shift last night." Chloe. It had to be Chloe. The fake sympathy, the prying questions. It all clicked into place with sickening clarity. "That's ridiculous," Amelia pleaded, looking at Mr. Harrison. "Sir, you know me. I've worked here for 2 years. I would never steal anything." "We'd like to search your locker, Ms. Hayes," the other officer said. It wasn't a request. Her mind reeled as they escorted her back through the restaurant, the curious and judgmental stares of her colleagues feeling like physical blows. They reached her locker in the staff room. Her hands trembled so badly she could barely work the combination. The officer opened the small metal door. Inside were her worn-out sneakers, a textbook on sociolinguistics, and a half-eaten granola bar. The officer reached in and pulled out her small purse. He unzipped it and tipped the contents onto a bench, a tube of chapstick, a few loose coins, a pen, and a diamond earring. It lay there on the wooden bench, glittering under the harsh fluorescent lights, a beautiful, malevolent star. It was impossibly intricate, a cascade of diamonds that seemed to burn with a cold fire. Amelia gasped a strangled sound of pure disbelief. No, No, that's not mine. I've never seen that before in my life. But her protests were useless. The evidence was right there, sparkling cruelly for everyone to see. Chloe, who had been passing by, let out a theatrical gasp. "Oh, Amelia, how could you?" she whispered, her voice dripping with false sorrow. "I didn't," Amelia cried, her voice cracking. "Someone put it there. It was you, wasn't it, Chloe?" Chloe recoiled, clutching her chest as if wounded. "Me? Why would I do that?" Mr. Harrison's face was a stony mask of disappointment and fury. "That's enough, Hayes. You're fired. Get your things. You're lucky Ms. Vance isn't pressing charges on the condition that you are terminated immediately and the earring is returned." The officers gave her a stern warning about the severity of grand larceny and how lucky she was to be walking away without handcuffs. They confiscated the earring and left. Numb Amelia packed her few belongings into a cardboard box. Her textbook felt like it was made of lead. Her career, her reputation, her means of survival all destroyed in a matter of minutes by a lie she couldn't disprove. The other servers avoided her eyes, whispering behind their hands. She walked out of Aurelia's grand entrance for the last time, not as a valued employee, but as a pariah, a thief. The city lights, which had seemed so promising the night before, now blurred into a mocking, indifferent glare through her tears. She had given a voice to a silent woman, and in return, the world had stolen hers. She was alone, unemployed, and branded with a crime she didn't commit, all because she had dared to connect with someone in a world where she didn't belong. The next 48 hours were a grey, suffocating fog of despair for Amelia. She sat in her tiny fourth-floor walk-up apartment, the cardboard box of her terminated career, sitting in the corner like a tombstone. The exhilaration she'd felt after her encounter with Elena Sterling now seemed like a cruel joke, a brief flicker of light before an eternal darkness. She replayed the events over and over, the glittering earring on the bench, Chloe's faux shock, Mr. Harrison's cold dismissal. How could her life unravel so quickly? She ignored the calls from her landlord about the now late rent. She couldn't bring herself to start looking for another job. Who would hire a waitress fired for stealing a $50,000 piece of jewelry? The accusation, even without charges, would follow her. The world felt small and hostile, a place where the wealthy and powerful could extinguish a person's future with a single, calculated lie. On the third day, as she was nursing a cup of cheap tea and staring blankly at the brick wall outside her window, there was a sharp, authoritative knock on her door. Not the friendly rap of a neighbor or the thud of a delivery. This was different. Her heart leaped into her throat. Was it the police back to arrest her? Had Isabella Vance changed her mind? With trembling hands, she opened the door a crack. Standing in the dimly lit hallway was a man in a black suit, built like a refrigerator, with an earpiece discreetly tucked into his ear. He was the epitome of private security. "Amelia Hayes?" he asked, his voice a low professional monotone. Yes. Mr. Jackson Sterling would like to see you. He's waiting downstairs." Amelia's mind went blank. Jackson Sterling. Why on earth would he want to see her? To gloat, to threaten her further. Her survival instincts screamed at her to slam the door, but a flicker of something else, the memory of the searching look in his eyes, made her pause. "Why?" she asked, her voice stronger than she expected. "He wishes to discuss the incident at the restaurant," the man said. "He believes there has been a misunderstanding." A sliver of hope, fragile and terrifying, pierced through her despair. She had nothing left to lose. "Okay," she said. "Give me a minute." Downstairs, a sleek black town car was parked at the curb, its tinted windows making it look like a piece of the night sky had fallen to earth. The security guard opened the door and Amelia slid in. Jackson Sterling was sitting opposite her. In the close confines of the car, his presence was even more formidable. He wasn't looking at his phone this time. His full, unnerving attention was on her. "Ms. Hayes," he began, his voice calm and measured. "I was sorry to hear about your dismissal." Amelia flinched. "Isabella Miss Vance, she told you I'm a thief. If you're here to lecture me or threaten me—" "Isabella told me her version of events," he interrupted, holding up a hand. "I am here because another version of events was presented to me. A much more compelling one." He paused, letting the words hang in the air. "My mother, Elena, was very distressed when she heard what had happened. She does not believe you are a thief. Her judgment of character is impeccable. She has an uncanny ability to see things other people miss. It's a skill one develops, I suppose, when you spend your life observing rather than listening." He leaned forward slightly. "My mother saw something that night, Ms. Hayes. She saw your co-worker, Chloe, speaking with Isabella near the powder room. She saw Isabella slip something into Chloe's hand. At the time, she thought nothing of it. But after the fact, the memory became significant." Amelia stared at him, her heart starting to race. Eleanor had seen them. "My mother's testimony is not evidence, of course," Jackson continued, his voice taking on a sharper, more clinical edge. "So I decided to acquire some. I have a certain leverage with the ownership group of Aurelia. I persuaded them that it was in their best interest to fully cooperate. The security footage from the staff hallway, which Mr. Harrison initially claimed had been corrupted, was miraculously recovered." He tapped a tablet on the seat beside him. The screen lit up, showing a grainy black and white video. It was the hallway outside the lockers. The timestamp corresponded to the end of Amelia's shift. The footage clearly showed Chloe, after Amelia had left for the night, furtively opening Amelia's locker, likely with a master key or a copied combination, and dropping a small object into her purse. Amelia gasped, pressing a hand to her mouth. There it was. The proof. The concrete, undeniable truth. Tears of relief and anger streamed down her face. "Why?" she whispered. "Why would they do this?" For Isabella, the motive was simple jealousy. Jackson said, his voice laced with a cold disgust that seemed directed at himself as much as anyone. "You made a connection with my mother in 10 minutes that she has failed to make in 2 years. You made her feel insecure. For your co-worker, the motive was even simpler. Isabella paid her." He gestured to the tablet again, swiping to a new screen showing a bank transfer for $10,000 from an account linked to Isabella to Chloe's. The sheer casual cruelty of it all stole Amelia's breath. Her entire life had been upended over a fleeting moment of jealousy and a bribe. "I have already had a conversation with Ms. Vance," Jackson said, his jaw tightening. "Our engagement is over. Her things are being removed from my penthouse as we speak. As for Chloe, Mr. Harrison has been instructed to terminate her employment, and I am ensuring that a quiet word follows her, making it very difficult to work in this city's hospitality industry again. He also offers his deepest apologies and has a severance check for you for your trouble." He looked at Amelia, his blue eyes holding a new emotioned respect. "My mother was right about you, and I was wrong. I live in a world of transactions, Ms. Hayes. I had forgotten what genuine kindness looks like. You showed it to my mother, and in return, my world tried to crush you for it. I am here to apologize, and to make things right." The car glided through the city streets, a silent, luxurious bubble, carrying them away from the wreckage of the past few days. For the first time, Amelia felt that the power radiating from the man beside her wasn't a threat, but a shield. He had used his immense influence not to protect his own, but to uncover the truth and defend a stranger. The billionaire had made his move, and it was one she had never seen coming. The town car didn't return to Aurelia or Amelia's dingy apartment building. It moved smoothly into the most affluent part of the Upper East Side, pulling up before a stately limestone building with a canopied entrance and a doorman who rushed out as if the president had arrived. "Where are we?" Amelia asked, her voice small. "My home," Jackson replied simply as the driver opened her door. "There is someone here who wants to see you." Her legs felt unsteady as she walked into the lobby, a cavernous space of marble and mahogany. The private elevator ascended silently, opening directly into Jackson's penthouse. It was less an apartment and more a palace in the sky, with floor-to-ceiling windows offering a breathtaking panoramic view of Central Park. The space was decorated with minimalist precision and priceless works of modern art, but it felt cold, impersonal. A museum of wealth. And sitting on a plush sofa, bathed in the afternoon light, was Eleanor Sterling. She looked up as they entered, and her face broke into a smile of pure, unadulterated relief. She stood and rushed to Amelia, moving with a speed that belied her age. She embraced her in a hug that was surprisingly strong, patting her back gently. Then she pulled back her hands, immediately beginning to sign fast and urgent. "I knew it. I knew you were innocent. I told Jackson. I told him he had to fix it. I am so sorry for what that horrible woman did to you." Her expression was a mixture of apology, anger, and profound relief. "It's okay." Amelia signed back her own emotions, overwhelming her. "It's over now. Thank you. You saved me." "No," Elena corrected her, her gaze firm. "You saved me first. You reminded me what it feels like to be heard." Jackson watched the exchange from a distance, a complex expression on his face. He had all the power and resources in the world, yet he was an outsider in this conversation, a tourist in his own mother's native land. After a few moments, he cleared his throat. "Ms. Hayes." "Amelia, please sit." They all sat. Eleanor insisting that Amelia sit beside her, occasionally patting her hand as if to reassure herself she was really there. "As I said," Jackson began taking a seat opposite them. "I want to make things right. Mr. Harrison will of course offer you your job back at Aurelia with a promotion and a raise, but I hope you will not accept it." Amelia looked at him, confused. "Working there, working anywhere in that industry, would be a waste of your talents," he continued. "That night watching you with my mother, I realized something. For years I've been trying to solve my mother's problem. I've thrown money at it, the best doctors, the most advanced technology. I treated her deafness like a bug in a system that needed to be patched. I never once thought to simply learn her language properly, to meet her where she is." He looked at his mother, and the love and regret in his eyes were palpable. "You did that, Amelia. Effortlessly. You didn't see a disability. You saw a person, and you connected." He leaned forward, his hands clasped. "This experience, it has been a rather brutal wake-up call. I want to do something more than just write checks to charities. I want to build something." He took a deep breath, and the air in the room seemed to charge with the energy of his next words. "I am establishing a new foundation, the Elena Sterling Foundation. Its mission will be to promote deaf education, accessibility, and cultural integration on a national scale. We will fund scholarships for deaf students, develop programs to teach ASL in public schools, partner with tech companies to create better communication tools, and lobby for stronger accessibility laws. It will be endowed with $100 million to start." Amelia stared, speechless, $100 million. The number was so vast it was abstract. A foundation of that scale needs a leader, Jackson said, his gaze locking with hers. It needs someone with expertise, passion, and empathy. Someone who understands the community it's meant to serve not as a case study, but as a lived experience. It needs someone who can bridge the hearing and the deaf worlds. He paused. I want you to run it, Amelia. I want you to be the executive director of the Elena Sterling Foundation. Amelia's mind short-circuited. Her jaw literally dropped. From fired waitress to the director of a major philanthropic foundation in the span of an afternoon. It was impossible. Me, she finally choked out. Mr. Sterling, I'm just a waitress. I have a linguistics degree, but I have no experience running a business, let alone $100 million foundation. You have the one qualification that matters, the one I can't buy. He countered, his voice firm. You have the heart for it. You have the why. I can hire people to handle the finances and the administration. I need you for the vision. I need you to be its soul. You will have any resource you require, any training you need. You will build your own team. The salary will be substantial. And you will change the world for millions of people like my mother. He gestured toward Eleanor, who was watching Amelia with shining, hopeful eyes. She signed slowly so there was no misunderstanding. Please, Amelia, do this with us. For us. The cold, sterile penthouse suddenly felt warm. The view of the city was no longer mocking or indifferent. It was a landscape of possibility. Everything in her life, the love for her parents, the years spent mastering their language, the quiet dedication to her studies, even the painful ordeal of the past few days, had all led her to this single pivotal moment. It wasn't just a job offer. It was destiny. It was an offer far beyond reckoning, not just in its monetary value, but in its potential to give her life a profound and lasting purpose. The choice was hers to go back to the world that had discarded her, or to step into a new one she could help create. A year later, the grand ballroom of the Pierre Hotel was filled to capacity. The occasion was the inaugural gala for the Elena Sterling Foundation. The room was a sea of New York's elite philanthropists, CEOs, artists, and politicians. But the atmosphere was different from the usual society event. On every table alongside the floral centerpieces were cards with the ASL alphabet. Interpreters stood discreetly at the sides of the stage, their hands moving in a graceful ballet. The theme of the night was not just charity, but communication. At the head table sat Jackson and Eleanor Sterling. Jackson looked different than he had a year ago. The cold, hard edges of the ruthless businessman had softened. He smiled more, a genuine smile that reached his eyes. Throughout the evening he would often turn to his mother, and in slow but steadily improving ASL, he would share a thought or a joke. He was learning her language. Elena herself was the star of the evening. Dressed in a shimmering silver gown, she was no longer a silent figure in the background. She was radiant, engaging, moving from table to table, speaking with donors and scholarship recipients in her native eloquent sign. She was the matriarch, the inspiration, the living heart of the foundation that bore her name. But the person commanding the room was Amelia Hayes. She stood at the podium, a picture of quiet confidence, in a simple, elegant navy dress. She was no longer the harried waitress from Morelia. She was the executive director, a respected and formidable leader in the world of philanthropy. Over the past year, she had thrown herself into the role with a ferocious passion, proving Jackson's faith in her to be more than justified. She had assembled a brilliant team, launched 3 major national initiatives, and had already changed the lives of thousands. She began her keynote address speaking eloquently about the Foundation's mission. But a few minutes in, she paused. "Words are powerful," she said, her voice clear and strong. "But sometimes the most important things are communicated without a single sound." She stepped away from the microphone, and the room fell silent. She looked directly at Elena, who was watching from the head table with tears of pride in her eyes. And then Amelia began to sign. Her hands moved with the poetic grace that had so captivated the Sterlings a year ago. She told the story of her parents, of the beauty and richness of deaf culture, of the challenges and the triumphs. As she signed, the interpreters gave voice to her movements, but the real power was in the silence, in the raw emotion conveyed through her hands and her expression. She spoke of a world where communication was not a barrier, but a bridge. A world where a person's worth was not measured by how they spoke, but by what they had to say. When she finished, there was a moment of stunned silence, and then the room erupted. But it wasn't just applause. Hundreds of people, inspired by the spirit of the evening, raised their hands and waved them in the air, the ASL sign for applause. It was a silent, beautiful ovation, a testament to the change she had already set in motion. Later in the evening, Jackson found Amelia on a balcony overlooking the glittering lights of the city. "You were incredible," he said, standing beside her. "We were incredible," she corrected him gently. "None of this would be possible without you and Eleanor." They stood in a comfortable silence for a moment. Their relationship had evolved over the years into one of deep mutual respect and a close, supportive friendship. He was her mentor in the world of business. She was his guide into the world of genuine human connection. "Do you ever think about that night at Aurelia?" he asked quietly. Amelia smiled. "Sometimes. It feels like a different lifetime, a different person. I met Isabella for coffee last week," he said unexpectedly. Amelia looked at him surprised. "She's changed. Losing everything forced her to take a hard look at herself. She apologized for what it's worth. She's working a 9-to-5 job now. She said something interesting. She said, 'In our world, kindness looks like weakness.' I think she's right. That's how I used to see it." He turned to face her. "You taught me it's the most profound kind of strength, a new language." He wasn't just talking about ASL. Amelia looked out at the city no longer a place of struggle, but a place of endless promise. She had lost her parents, lost her job, and nearly lost her hope. But through a simple, risky act of kindness, she had found her purpose. She had given a voice back to Elena Sterling, and in doing so, had helped a powerful man rediscover his own heart. She had built a new life, not on the foundation of wealth or status, but on the simple, unshakable truth that the greatest communication comes from a place of love and understanding. And that was a language everyone given the chance could learn to speak. The success of the Elena Sterling Foundation was not a quiet affair. It became a media darling, a feel-good story in a cynical world, the repentant billionaire, his reawakened mother, and the waitress turned visionary director. Amelia found herself on magazine covers and news segments, always gracefully redirecting the spotlight onto the Foundation's work and the community it served. For a year, their progress felt charmed, an unstoppable force for good. But in the world of advocacy, even the brightest lights cast shadows, and it is in those shadows that dissent often takes root. The challenge didn't come from a corporate rival or a jealous socialite. It came from within the very community they sought to empower. It arrived in the form of a widely circulated online article written by Mark Jenner, a respected third-generation deaf activist and journalist, known for his sharp intellect and uncompromising principles. The headline was brutal. the Sterling Foundation, a gilded cage of good intentions. The article was not a simple critique, it was a surgical dissection. Jenner acknowledged the Foundation's financial contributions, but questioned its soul. He painted Jackson Sterling as a tycoon, salving a lifetime of guilt with a massive checkbook. He described the galas and high-profile events as hearing tourism, where the wealthy could feel good about themselves without engaging in the real gritty work of dismantling systemic barriers. But his most pointed criticism was reserved for Amelia. He never named her as a thief or questioned her integrity. He questioned her identity. While Ms. Hayes is a fluent signer and a coder child of deaf adults, he wrote the leadership of a foundation for the deaf should be by the deaf. No matter her skill or sincerity, she is a hearing person interpreting a deaf experience. She is a translator, not a native speaker of our lives. The Foundation, for all its gloss, perpetuates the oldest and most insidious trope, the hearing savior benevolently bestowing a voice upon a community that has never been silent, only ignored. The article hit Amelia like a physical blow. She sat in her large, sunlit office, the view of the city, now seeming to mock her, and read the words over and over. Every sentence chipped away at her confidence. He had twisted her greatest strength, her unique position, as a bridge between two worlds into her greatest liability. The accusation felt deeply personal, striking at the heart of who she was. Was she just an interpreter? Had she, in her desire to honor her parents, overstepped a boundary she didn't even know existed? When Jackson stormed into her office, his face was like thunder. He was holding a tablet with the article displayed, his finger jabbing at the screen. This is libel, Amelia. Slander. My legal team is already drafting a cease and desist. We'll sue him, his publication, and anyone who shares it. We'll bury him. The cold, ruthless Jackson Sterling was back, ready to solve a problem with overwhelming force. But Amelia, looking at his fury, only heard an echo of Mark Jenner's critique, a powerful hearing man trying to silence a deaf voice. No, Jackson. Don't, she said, her own voice quiet but firm. What do you mean, no? He demanded. He attacked you. He attacked my mother. He's trying to tear down everything we've built. And what will suing him prove? She countered, standing up to face him. It will prove his entire point, that we're a powerful, hearing-led organization that uses its money and influence to crush dissent. We can't fight this with lawyers. We have to fight it with communication. Communication? He's not interested in communication. This is a hit piece. Is it? Amelia challenged her own hurt, giving way to a new clarity. Or is there a kernel of truth in it that we're afraid to see? The Foundation's board is entirely hearing. The senior leadership, apart from a few consultants, is hearing. He's not wrong about the structure, Jackson. Maybe I'm not wrong, but maybe I'm not completely right either. Her vulnerability disarmed him. The anger drained from his face, replaced by confusion. What are you suggesting? I'm going to meet him, she said. Alone. No lawyers, no PR, just me. Jackson's protective instincts flared. Absolutely not. He'll eat you alive. Let him try, she replied. This isn't your world, Jackson. This is mine, and I need to do this my way. The next day, Amelia walked into the small, cluttered office of the Deaf Independent, the online journal Mark Jenner ran. It was a world away from the Sterling Tower, a space filled with books, overflowing filing cabinets, and the quiet hum of servers. Mark Jenner sat at his desk, a man in his 50s with intense, intelligent eyes and the powerful hands of a lifelong signer. He did not look surprised to see her. Amelia hadn't come alone, however. As she'd left the Foundation, Elena had met her in the lobby, dressed not for a gala, but in simple, elegant trousers and a sweater. She had looked at Amelia and signed, "He speaks of my experience. I will go with you." Now the three of them sat around a small table. The air was thick with tension. Amelia began signing and speaking for Elena's benefit. "Mr. Jenner, I read your article. I'm not here to argue. I'm here to listen." Mark's gaze was skeptical. He signed his movements sharp and precise. "You are here to manage a public relations crisis." "No," Eleanor interjected before Amelia could respond. "She is here because she has respect. Something my son is still learning." She turned her full attention to Mark. "You write about my life as a prop in my son's story of redemption. For 70 years, that is what I was. A silent, beautiful prop. I went to parties. I smiled, I nodded. No one spoke my language. My own son, whom I loved dearly, could barely speak to me. I lived in a gilded cage." Her signs became more powerful, more passionate. Then this young woman, a waitress, looked at me, and she saw me. Not a deaf woman. Not a billionaire's mother. She saw a person and spoke my language. You call her a hearing savior. Do you know what I call her? The first person in 30 years who asked me what I recommended from a menu. Tears welled in Elena's eyes. "Is your critique of our foundation valid?" "Yes. We need more deaf leaders. We must have them. That will be our next step, and you have opened our eyes to it. But do not you dare diminish the bridge this woman built. She did not save me. She connected with me. And that connection unlocked this foundation. It unlocked my son. It unlocked me. An ally is not an enemy, Mr. Jenner. And a bridge is not a cage." Mark Jenner was silent. He had come prepared for a corporate spin master for a defensive director. He was not prepared for the raw, undeniable truth of Elena Sterling's testimony. He looked from the fierce matriarch to the young woman beside her, who had tears streaming down her own face. He had spent his life fighting for his community to be heard, and here in his own office he had almost failed to listen. Finally he nodded slowly. "A bridge." He signed, the sharpness gone from his movements. "Tell me, Ms. Hayes, where do we build it to next?" The story of Amelia and the Sterlings reminds us that the most valuable currency we have isn't money, it's empathy. It shows that one small gesture of kindness can ripple outwards, exposing deceit and transforming lives in ways we can never predict. In a world that often values status over substance, Amelia's story is a powerful testament to the strength found in authenticity and the courage it takes to bridge the divides between us. She didn't just serve a meal, she served a lesson in humanity that even a billionaire had to learn. If this story touched your heart and reminded you of the power of compassion, please give this video a like and share it with someone who might need to hear it. Don't forget to subscribe to our channel and hit that notification bell so you never miss another story that celebrates the best of the human spirit. What was your favorite twist in the story? Let us know in the comments below.